Pierre Burton Show, the program that comes to you from the major capitals of the world. This edition comes to you from Hong Kong. And Pierre's guest is the man who taught karate, judo, and Chinese boxing to James Garner, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin, and James Coburn. The newest Mandarin superstar, known in the West for his appearances in Batman, The Green Hornet, Ironside, and Longstreet. His name is Bruce Lee, and he doesn't even speak Mandarin. And here's Pierre.
Well, how can you play in Mandarin movies if you don't even speak Mandarin? How do you do that?
Well, first of all, I speak only Cantonese.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there is quite a difference as far as pronunciation and things like that go.
So somebody else's voice is used, right?
Definitely, definitely.
You just make the words. Doesn't that sound strange when you go to the movies, especially in Hong Kong, in your own town, and you see yourself with somebody else's voice?
Well, not really, you see, because most of the Mandarin pictures done here are dubbed anyway.
They're dubbed anyway?
Anyway, I mean, disregard. I mean, they shoot without sound. So it doesn't, make any difference.
Your lips never quite make the right words, do they?
Yeah, well, that's where the difficulty lies, you see. I mean, in order to, because the Cantonese have a different way of saying things, different from the Mandarin.
Yeah.
So I have to find, like, something similar to that and keep a kind of a feeling going behind that. Something that matching the Mandarin do.
Like the
Does it sound complicated?
Like the old silent days. But I gather in the movies made here, the dialogue is pretty stilted anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, see, to me, a motion picture is motion.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to keep the dialogue down to the minimum.
Did you look at many Mandarin movies before you started playing the first one?
Yes.
What did you think of them when you saw them?
Quality-wise, I mean, I have to admit that it's not quite up to the standard. However, it is growing, and it is getting higher and higher and going toward that standard than what I would term quality.
They say the secret of your success in that movie, The Big Boss, which was such a success here and rocketed you to stardom in Asia, was that you did your own fighting. As an expert in the various martial arts in China, what did you think of the fighting that you saw in the movies that you studied before you became a star?
Well, I mean, definitely in the beginning, I had no intention or whatsoever that what I was practicing and what I'm still practicing now would lead to this to begin with. But martial art has a very, very deep meaning as far as my life is concerned, because as an actor, as a martial artist, as a human being, all these I have learned from martial art.
Maybe for our audience who doesn't know what it means, you might explain exactly what you mean by martial art.
Right. Martial art include all the combative arts like karate or karate, judo, Chinese kung fu or Chinese boxing, whatever you call it. All those. You see, like Aikido, Korean, I can go on and on and on. But it's a combative form of fighting. I mean, it's not, some of them became sport, but some of them are still not. I mean, they're used, for instance, kicking to the groin, jabbing fingers at the eyes, and things like that.
No wonder you're successful in it. Chinese movies are full of this kind of action anyway. They needed a guy like you could...
Violence, man.
So you didn't have to use a double when you moved into the motion picture world here. You did it all yourself. Can you break 5 or 6 pieces of wood with your hand or your foot?
I'll probably break my hand and foot.
But tell me a little bit... you set up a school in Hollywood, didn't you, for people like James Garner and Steve McQueen and the others?
Yes.
Why would they want to learn Chinese martial arts? Because of a movie role?
Not really. I mean, most of them, you see, to me, at least the way that when I teach it, all type of knowledge ultimately means self-knowledge. Mm-hmm. So therefore, they're coming in to, and ask me to teach them not so much of how to defend themselves or how to do somebody in. Rather, they want to learn to express themselves through some movement, be it anger, be it determination, or whatsoever. So in other words, what I'm saying, therefore, is that he is paying me to show him, in combative form, the art of expressing the human body.
Which is acting, in a sense, isn't it?
Well...
Or it would be a useful tool for an actor to have.
It might sound too philosophical, but it's acting, or acting, unacting, if you
You've lost me.
I have.
Boxing, how does it differ from, say, our kind of boxing?
Well, first we use the feet,
That's
and
a
then
start.
we use the elbow, and
Use the thumb.
you name it, man. We
Use it all.
You have to, you see, because I mean that is the expression of the human body. I mean everything. I mean, not just the hand. And when you're talking about combat, well, I mean, if it is a sport, now you're talking about something else. You have regulations, you have rules. But when you're talking about fighting as it is,
rules.
with no rules,
real fighting.
well then, baby, you better train every part of your body. And when you do punch, now I'm leaning forward a little bit, hoping not to hurt any camera angle. I mean, you got to put your whole hip into it and snap it and get all your energy in there and make this into a weapon.
I don't want to tangle you in any dark that right now. You came at me pretty fast there. What is the difference between Chinese boxing and what we see these young men doing at 8 o'clock every morning on the rooftops in the parks called shadow boxing, which they're always...
Well, actually, you see, that is part of Chinese boxing.
It is.
There are so many schools. different
Everybody here
schools.
seems to be, going like this all the time.
Well, that's good. I'm very glad. I'm very glad to see that, because at least somebody is caring for their own body, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good sign. Well, it's a kind of a slow form of exercise, which is called Tai Chi Chuan. I'm speaking Mandarin just now.
Yeah.
Cantonese Tai Chi Chuan, okay? And it's more of an exercise for the elderly, not so much for the
Give me a
young.
demonstration. Show me. Can you do a little bit of it? Just so
I mean,
it's,
hand-wise, it's very slow.
what was it?
And you push it out, but all the time you are keeping the continuity going. Bending, stretching, everything. You just keep it moving.
It's like a ballet dancer there.
Yeah, it is. I mean, to them, you see, the idea is running water never grows stale. So you got to just keep on flowing.
Of all your students, famous, James Garner, Steve McQueen, Lee Marvin, James Coburn, Roman Polanski, which was the best? Who adapted best to this Oriental form of exercise and defense?
Well, depending, okay? Now, as a fighter, Steve McQueen, now, he is good in that department because that son of a gun got the toughness in him.
Yeah.
I mean,
see it on the screen.
I mean, he would say, all right, baby, here I am, man. And he'll do it.
Yeah.
Now, James Coburn is a peace-loving man,
I met him.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
you've met him. I mean, he's really, really nice. I mean,
Yeah.
super mellow and all that. I mean,
Yes.
Now, he appreciates the philosophical part of it. Therefore, his understanding of it is deeper than Steve. So it's really hard to say. You see what I'm saying now?
I see.
I mean, it's different. So that's, depending on what you see in it.
Interesting. We don't, in our world, and haven't since the days of the Greeks who did, combine philosophy and art with sport. But quite clearly, the Oriental attitude is that the three are facets of the same things.
Man, listen, you see, really, to me, ultimately, martial art means honestly expressing yourself. Now, it is very difficult to do. I mean, it is easy for me to put on a show and be cocky and be flooded with a cocky feeling and then feel like pretty cool and all that. Or I can make all kinds of phony things, you see what I mean? Blinded by it. Or I can show you some really fancy movement. But to express oneself honestly, not lying to oneself, and to express myself honestly, now that, my friend, is very hard to do. And you have to train. You have to keep your reflexes so that when you want it, it's there. When you want to move, you're moving. And when you move, you are determined to move. Not taking 1 inch, not anything less than that. If I want to punch, I'm going to do it, man, and I'm going to do it, you see. So that is the type of thing you have to train yourself into it, to become one with the, you think?
Yeah, this is very un-Western, this attitude. I want to ask you about your movie and TV career, but first we'll take a break, and I'll be back with Bruce Lee. I've been talking to Bruce Lee mainly about the Chinese martial arts, which include things like Chinese boxing, karate, and judo, which is what he taught when he was in Hollywood. After he left the University of Washington, where he studied of all things philosophy, if you can believe that. He did, but that perhaps you understand why the two go together from the first half of this program. And you can perhaps understand how he got into films. He knew a lot of actors, but I'm told the big break when you played in Longstreet. I must tell the audience that
That's it.
Bruce Lee had a bit part or a supporting role in the Longstreet series, and this had an enormous effect on the audience. What was it?
Well, you see, the title of that particular episode of Longstreet is called The Way of the Intercepting Fist. Now, I think the successful ingredient in it was because I was being Bruce Lee.
Yourself.
Myself, right. And did that part, just express myself, like I say, honestly express myself at that time. And because of that, I brought, favorable mentioning in like New York Times, which says like the Chinaman, who incidentally came off quite convincingly enough to earn himself a television series, and so on and so on and so forth.
Can you remember the lines by Sterling Siliphant, the key lines?
He's one of my students, you know that?
Was he too?
Yes.
Everybody is your student. But you read, there were some lines that express your philosophy. I don't know if you remember them or not.
Oh, I remember that. I
Let's
said,
hear.
this is what it is, okay?
You're talking to Longstreet, played by James Francisca.
I said, empty your mind. Be formless, shapeless, like water. Now you put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot. Now water can flow, or it can crash. Be water, my friend. Like that, you see?
Oh, I see. I get the idea. I get the power behind it. So, now, two things have happened. First, there's a pretty good chance that you'll get a TV series in the States called The Warriors, in which you use what, the martial arts in a Western setting?
That was the original idea. Now,
Yeah.
Paramount, I did Longstreet for Paramount, and Paramount wants me to be in a television series. On the other hand, Warner Brother wants me to be in another one, but both of them, I think, they want me to be in a modernized type of a thing. And they think that Western idea is out. Whereas
You want to do the Western, eh?
I want, because you see, how else can you justify all these punching and kicking and violence except in the period of the West? In nowadays, you don't go around on the street kicking people or punching people. Because if you do, that's it. I don't care how good you are,
But this is true also of the Chinese dramas, which are mainly costume dramas. They're all full of blood and gore over here.
Oh, you mean here? Yeah. Well, unfortunately, you see, I hope that the picture I am in would either explain why the violence was done, whether right or wrong or whatnot. But unfortunately, pictures, most of them here, are done mainly just for the sake of violence. You know what I mean? Like, fighting for 30 minutes, get stabbed 50 times.
But I'm fascinated. Let me give you your microphone then. I'm fascinated that you came back.
I am a martial artist.
You came back to Hong Kong on the verge of success in Hollywood and full of it, and suddenly, on the strength of one picture, you become a superstar. Everybody knows you. You have to change your phone number. You get mobbed in the streets. Now, what are you going to do? Are you going to be able to live in both worlds? Are you going to be a superstar here, or one in the States, or both?
Well, let me say this. First of all, the word superstar really turned me off, and I'll tell you why. Because the word star, man, is an illusion. It's something what the public calls you. You should look upon oneself as an actor, man. You would be very pleased if somebody say, hey, man, you are a super actor. It is much better than, superstar.
Yeah, but you've got to admit that you are a superstar. You're not going to, if you're going to give me the truth.
I am now. I'm honestly saying this, okay? Yes, I have been very successful.
Yeah.
Okay? But I think the word star is I do not look upon myself as a star. I really don't. Believe me, man, when I say it. I'm not saying it because
What are you going to do? Let's get back to the question.
Okay.
Are you going to stay in Hong Kong and be famous? Or are you going to go to the United States and be famous? Or are you going to try and eat your cake and have it too?
I am going to do both because, you see, I have already made up my mind that in the United States, I think something about the Oriental, the true Oriental should be shown.
Hollywood sure as heck hasn't.
You better believe it, man. It's always the pigtail and bouncing around, chop, with the eyes slant and all that. And I think that's very, very out of
Is it true that you were the first job you had was being cast as Charlie Chan's number one?
Yeah,
boy?
number one son. Yeah. No,
They never made a movie.
No. They were gonna make it into like a new Chinese James Bond type of a thing.
Oh, I
Now
see.
that the old man Chan is dead, Charlie is dead, and his son
I
is
see.
carrying on.
But they didn't do that.
Batman came along, you see, because
that's
and then everything was started to be going into that, that kind of
Green Hornet. Which you were in. But is
I
it
mean, by the way, I did a really terrible job in that, I have to say.
really? You didn't like yourself? I didn't see it. Let me ask you, however, about the problems that you face as a Chinese hero in an American series. Have people come up in the industry and said, well, we don't know how the audience are going to take a non-American?
Well, such question has been raised. In fact, it is being discussed, and that is why The Warrior is not going to be on.
I see.
You see, because unfortunately, such thing does exist in this world. You see, like I don't know, certain part of the country, right, where like they think that business-wise it's a risk. And I don't blame them, I mean, in the same way, it's like in Hong Kong, if a foreigner come and became a star, if I were the man with the money, I probably would have my own worry of whether or not the acceptance would be there. But that's all right, because if you honestly express yourself, it doesn't matter, see? Because
Are you, how about the other side of the coin? Is it possible that you are, I mean, you're fairly hip and fairly Americanized. Are you too Western for Oriental audiences, do you think?
Oh man, like, how? I have been criticized for that.
You have, eh?
Oh,
I would
yes,
think so.
definitely. Well, let me say this. When I do the Chinese film, I'll try my best not to be as American as I, have been adjusted to for the last 12 years in the States. But when I go back to the States, it seems to be the other way around.
You're too exotic, eh?
Yeah, man. I mean, they're trying to get me to do too many things that are really for the sake of being exotic. You understand what I'm trying to say?
Oh, sure.
So it's really, I mean, it's
when you live in both worlds, it brings us problems as well as advantages, and you've got both. Time to go to a commercial. I'll be back in a moment with Bruce Lee. Let me ask you whether the change in attitude on the part of the Nixon administration towards China has helped your chances of starring in an American TV series.
Well, first of all, this happened before that.
Yeah.
But I do think that things of Chinese will be quite interesting for the next few years. I mean, not that I'm politically, inclining toward anything.
No, I understand that. I just wondering.
But I mean, once the opening of China, that it will bring more understanding.
Yeah.
More things that are, like different, and maybe in the contrast of comparison, some new thing might grow. So therefore, I mean, it's a very rich period to be in. I mean, like if I were born, let's say, 40 years ago,
Yeah.
if I have a thought in my mind, I said, boy, I'm going to star in a movie or star in a television series in America. Well, that might be a vague dream, but I think right now, maybe.
You still think of yourself Chinese, or do you ever think of yourself as North American?
You know what I want to think of myself? As a human being. Because, I mean, I don't want to sound like, as Confucius say, but under the sky, under the heaven, man, there is but one family. It just so happened, man, that people are different.
Okay, we got to go. Thank you, Bruce Lee, for coming here.
Thank you
for
yeah.
watching.
Thank you.
You've been watching Bruce Lee on The Pierre Burton Show, a half-hour program of conversation, opinion, and debate. This is Bernard Cowan speaking.